A massive seismic shift in the world of Flesh and Blood has just occurred thanks to this banned and restricted announcement that was just posted at the conclusion of Nationals season, which is, spoiler alert, right now. Canadian Nationals crowned their champion. Congratulations, Sonny, for winning on Zen, and Zen collected an alarming amount of Living Legend points over the course of these 3 weeks, plus one if you're counting US Nationals in there as well. And they did not bury the lead. They did not make us wait at all. They pumped this banned and restricted announcement out immediately so that you can now take this information and prepare for the upcoming new metagame that will exist for the Pro Tour in Amsterdam in a few weeks. So let's talk about how this fundamentally shifts everything within the game of Flesh and Blood, and I'm not just talking about Classic Constructed. We'll get to the bottom. We'll even talk a spoiler card that they tucked in there as well, but starting with the thing that is perhaps the most important, and that is this. In Classic Constructed, Bonds of Ancestry Yellow and Bonds of Ancestry Blue are now banned. So, like I said, Zen, Tamer of Purpose, the basically clear de facto best deck in the format. The format is warped around Zen in its current state because you are either playing Zen or trying to disrupt him. There wasn't even really the ability to play as the third prong in that triangle format where you kind of like take decks that beat the thing that beats Zen, because really nothing besides New has shown and proven to be truly successful at overcoming the hurdle that is a billion tigers, and specifically Bonds of Ancestry. And that is essentially what they get at as they explain. In fact, I would say I read this through once already. A second time will probably happen after this announcement, but this is an incredibly detailed and thorough write-up as to the sort of the backstory from the devs' perspective and why they chose to essentially make Bonds of Ancestry a red majestic at this point, not giving you access to Bonds Yellow and Bonds Blue, which I was going to say, some people have said that. I think 3 or 4 weeks ago that was actually brought up as a possibility by a couple of people. I remember mentioning it in a video, or maybe it was in a stream, and I thought that would be a really ballsy way to solve the problem, making that simply a majestic, but the problem is it would probably just cut down Katsu in the process. But that's what they've gone and done, and that is incredibly interesting to see how this is going to change things. I will say this is definitely a strong, heavy hand onto the Zen deck, though it does not kill him entirely, because it is possible to play Zen now in the way that the devs intended, and that was with more of the tigers, as they talk about right here. This vision for Zen was embodied beautifully in the deck that Jake the Baker Warburton used to win his ProQuest Plus at the UK Games Expo, which was one of the first wins that actually occurred. I think it was like on that very first week. It was more of a crouching tiger Zen that didn't really have anything to do with Bonds of Ancestry. I personally was most excited for this version of Zen as well, and so I'm glad to be able to play Zen guilt-free at this point, not having to look at my opponent just crumple under the triple bonds lines that exist that basically just make the game a game of solitaire. They hit on a couple of really good points that I'm going to bounce around between. For example, that they say that the new lists were so refined and so full of disruption that the Zen lists that they were building towards the end of their testing were playing a more measured approach game plan that allowed them to outlast that disruption. And New is indeed, and was proven last week, to be a force to reckon against Zen. That was sort of the breakout hero, winning like 4, I think won 5 last week, national championships, and to Zen's 4. But I don't think that is going to be the case when the Metagame Minute releases this week, showing the results of the rest of Nationals. And again, so they mentioned early on that they attempted their best to balance Zen and make him not just game-breaking, and they underestimated his ceiling based on some of the internal testing that they do. So all of this combined to unleash a deck on the real world that falls ever so slightly outside of our acceptable power ranges. I think this is the right way to say it, ever so slightly outside of the acceptable power ranges, because you can target the deck with more disruption. They've printed it. in the form of multiple like on-hit 6-power attacks, right? They exist in the game already. There is disruption. There are heroes that are okay with disruption, that can push that disruption on Zen. And the deck is beatable. It can sometimes have clunky hands. But the problem is, and they say it right here, Zen just blows you up and you can't play the game. You cannot play the game of Flesh and Blood because Zen just blows you up. And they even bring this up, and this is the important thing, because as I was watching Canadian Nationals, this thought ran across my mind. It was a thought that I think it was going on in the top 8, and the thought was this: Zen is very similar in play style. I think someone even mentioned it on the stream. Play style to Kano, in that you're trying to assemble a combo, except Zen allows you at any time tutor that combo out and say, "Oops, all damage," way more effectively, efficiently, and consistently than Kano ever can, which leads them to nuking out of orbit the ability to play 9 Bonds of Ancestry in the list, which I will say probably people weren't necessarily doing. You can play 9 Bonds, but there was a variety of amounts of Bonds that made it into the list. Nevertheless, Bonds is the source of the degeneracy. I think everyone was providing these more measured approach of, like, let's just hit the boots, which is my thought. I thought they were going to hit the boots. But the more I watched it this weekend, I was more or less like, this is just not tenable for the game of Flesh and Blood. This hero is too far removed of just like a hand slap of takeaway Stride of Reprisal for the game to function in the way that it was intended. Good games of Flesh and Blood may have been played by this hero and for other people in the national season, but far too many bad games of Flesh and Blood, bad games, period, of card games were played, and that deserves a reset. And where does the blame fall? Well, it starts with the lack of testing, and that's just a fact. I mean, it's hard to say, but it's just a fact that is the case. And they are going through and they are taking a heavy-handed approach to fixing it, and I applaud them for at least taking that approach to fix it and do a slight reset. It means that players now have to revisit and reconvene and come up with what they're going to play in a few weeks for Pro Tour Amsterdam, but so be it, because now players and viewers of this beautiful game of Flesh and Blood can watch this experience unfold in real time, where a new metagame is forged and it doesn't have to revolve around one meta warping hero. Now, who knows? Maybe New becomes the meta warping hero that fulfills that role, but I don't believe that is going to be the case, because the cool thing about all of the other heroes, in my opinion right now, is that they all have little counters here and there throughout the metagame, except Zen. And now that is being changed. Bonds is being removed. You can play Bonds in red. I think that's very cool. It does make it a little bit more uncomfortable to like look at a new player or a player that's like just picking up things and going, okay, these two no, this one yes. But I don't think if you're not doing that with every ban, if sometimes when the occasion calls for it, you do it, but really it's more if I'm going to ban something, it's going to be blanket and easy to understand, so be it. It's easier to make this the exception than it is to make it the rule. So I applaud them for doing that as well. Now, continuing on, because this was not the only change they made, I wrote an article for MinMax Games about Living Legend format. The Living Legend format is going to be gracing your LGS, perhaps near you, in the skirmish season. And there are a couple of big-time decks that are really going to be putting their feet on the gas to try and establish dominance in that format. And one of them that I mentioned was Zen. Zen in that format is going to be very strong. I 100% agree and believe that it is going to be one of the dominant decks on the tables that skirmish season the entire way through. And so to curb a little bit of that aggression and the aggression from other heroes in the format, Channel Lake Frigid is no longer restricted. Beforehand, they instituted this restriction system where if a card is restricted, you could only have one copy in a deck. That is no longer the case for Channel Lake Frigid. Now you may play 3 copies of Channel Lake Frigid in your decks, which is fantastic if your name is Icelander, because she died for the sins of Starvo, and she is very far down the totem pole in the pecking order in the Living Legend status because of losing that card. That card coming back into the fore is quite good for her. They actually mentioned that right here. They want her to be part of the Living Legend metagame, and this is incredibly big when it was basically restricted and nerfed, out to oblivion for her deck. It was originally intended to be very good for a knock on Bravo Star of the Show, and the restriction of Hypothermia and Channel Lake Frigid swung too far in the direction of aggression, and making the numbers decks go burr is something they want to curb to some degree. So Channel Lake Frigid is now back on the menu, and that is really good in my opinion for this format. I think that is a fantastic change, especially on the eve of more Living Legend format events coming through the pipeline. So if you wanted to play Icelander, she's pretty good. She's pretty cool. She's really fun. Pretty cool, pun intended. You now have access to all 3 Channel Lake Frigids again, which is great. Now, if this is a bad change, they are like, yeah, cool. We'll go back and we'll revisit it, and we'll change things from there. But nonetheless, that is what is on the menu now. Finally, we come to the Blitz format changes, and you might think that I am about to lose my mind, and you would be wrong, because I have been playing, in fact, I'm just going to pull it up right now. I have been playing a good bit of Blaze because I was going to make a deck tech. I know it's cut off. I'm not going to change it. I don't care that much because I wanted to point this out. I've been playing a good bit of Blaze. I think this deck feels pretty good right now. I have 1 Aether Flare red with a second one in sideboard just in case, because I found that card to be meh. It's all right. And then I have 2 Aether Wildfires in the deck because this card wins you so many games in the Blitz format. And my results are 23 matches, 83% win rate, losing 4 games total across 23 games. You can take that for what it is. You can take that however you want to take it. I'm playing against Talishar. I'm literally just queuing up randomly. So if you don't want to, factor these results to mean anything, so be it. These were the heroes that I beat. If you can read those, feel free. The deck works. The deck is freaking good. It is very good. It is not meta warping, but it does require you to play AB3 in the meta going forward, which some heroes can do very easily. In fact, a lot of heroes can do very easily. But really, I would say this card is just a card that doesn't belong in Blitz as a card in general. I would also argue that some hits need to be done to Rhinar as well that just don't belong in Blitz. Nevertheless, Aether Wildfire is banned, and they also banned Aether Flare. This one I'm a little bit more on. It's probably super not necessary because Aether Flare, as of right now, is actually not as good in Blaze. Like, you could still do some pretty good power combos. Aether Wildfire, I am actually totally in favor for. I held off on making this video, and the reason I bring it up, of course, I held off on making this video because I wanted to see if they banned Aether Wildfire, because I was hopeful that they would. So now that they have banned Aether Wildfire in this whole ordeal, this deck will change slightly, but honestly, the deck's still freaking good. Take out Aether Wildfire and this red Aether Flare, I guess blues and reds. Take those out and then swap them for any ones, reds and blues, and this power card you'll have to swap for something else. I'm not sure yet. Nevertheless, the deck will still be good and functional without killing it from orbit, essentially. Nevertheless, the other reason I like the changes here, and why probably Aether Flare is banned as well, is that in the Blitz format, those cards are very powerful, and you're about to get 2 new wizards. With 2 new wizards comes anything that possibly could be happening, and they also talk about amp. Damage amplification is fine. After all, amp is a mechanic that is going to be coming heavily in Rosetta, and these 2 cards, Aether Wildfire and Aether Flare, just make the quest a bit too easy. So be it. I am fine with that, and I do think that overall, these 2 cards being removed feel totally fine in this format. Nevertheless, they have removed Aether Wildfire and Aether Flare. Crown of Seeds is still banned. They are not unbanning that. The new Terra, or I guess I should say the new Earth hero Terra, could have played that, will not play that. And also the 2 new Earth Runeblade, or the Earth Runeblade and Earth Wizard could have played it. They cannot play it in Blitz because that card is banned. So just keep that in mind. They also wanted to give players a brief window to experience the maximum power fantasy of that hero in a reasonably low stakes environment. Yeah, it's interesting because Skirmish Season 9 might have been the time for that. No, I mean, not many players have had access to this promo. And so this is kind of a strange statement because you don't really have the capability of living that power fantasy unless you're, playing online or proxying the card, which I guess you could be doing, and you can't do it at the armory level. So you would have to have bought the card for expensively, and then played it. But Skirmish Season 9 was probably the time where you would live that power fantasy, but they are not going to allow that to happen because you would find a lot of wins. I'll just put it that way. You'd find a lot of wins with Blaze in that format. Even if your players are playing AB3, you can sometimes just win very easily. Deck was very good. It's good to see those cards go. And to those wizards among you who are concerned that this means an endless wait until you can do massive bursts of arcane damage again, I'd guess you're in for a pretty big shock come Rosetta, because this card was spoiled. Volzar, the Lightning Rod, is a lightning wizard weapon staff two-handed. I want a one-handed staff, come on now. If you control an aura permanent with sigil in its name, this costs 1 less to activate. Once per turn instant, pay 1 Amp X, where X is the number of lightning cards you've played this turn. So Amp, again, it amps up the amount of damage that you deal from your next arcane effect. That includes weapons, but this, of course, would be your weapon, so it won't do that. Nevertheless, it would amp up whatever spell you're playing that would deal arcane damage. So depending on how many times you can kind of stack on one singular turn lightning cards that you've played, then you can just jam that out. Now, this costs 1, but if you control a permanent with sigil in its name, it costs 1 less. So if you go here, let's just open this up, open the wizard up, and then we'll leave the wizard tag. No, we'll take it away. We'll go sigil, and then we'll select ST Aura. I think you can do it that way. So the ones that exist right now are Sigil of Protection. So you can expect there to be more sigil named auras in the Rosetta set so that you can actually activate this, which is a token. So this we can assume is one of the token, what do they call it? Connected weapons to the heroes. Sound off in a comment below. Just blanked on the name of that thing. Nevertheless, these are all the changes that they've made. I think these are all good changes. I don't think anything on here is a bad change for the game. I think all of them are very good for the game of Flesh and Blood, and I am very happy to see that Zen comes back down to earth. The meta will open up again. I'm very happy to see Channel Lake Frigid come back down to Icelander players everywhere and allow them to play the game in Living Legend format. And I think these are wise things. Honestly, Aether Wildfire should just stay on the ban list in Blitz and not come off. Let me know what you think about all of these changes. What does this do to the game of Flesh and Blood? It has massive repercussions in my mind. I want to hear from you though. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts. And if you enjoy these type of videos, make a number go slightly higher, join on Patreon so that you can support the Armada. And as always, thanks for watching.